This is a helpful lesson in botany. You know, a lot of people ask, you know, what tree is this, and they post a picture or something. And you can do a lot of this homework yourself, you know. And you can really eliminate a lot of trees from the equation just by knowing one simple phrase: mad dog, or mad. Maple, ash, dogwood. Those are the three trees that have opposite branching. Opposite branching is that right there. The branches come out from the main stem directly across from one another. Maple, ash, and dogwood. You can see it from the main trunk all the way out to the very little leaf tip. Every single appendage is opposite, directly across from one another. I'll show you alternate. So here's another tree. Let's say I have no idea what this tree is. I come here and I look at the leaves. Oh, let me get it down here for you. Those leaves are alternate. There's one leaf here, and there's not a leaf on the other side. You come down, and then there's a leaf on the other side. They alternate as they go down the branch. You'll have one on this side, you'll come down a little further, you'll have one on the right side, come down a little further, have one on the left side. That same thing is true for the entire tree, from the trunk all the way out to the very leaf tip. There's only one leaf coming off at the very end there instead of two. So that lets me know it's alternate. And this is a basswood. But if I was in tree identification mode and I came out here and I'm like, man, I really want to know what this tree is. Well, right away, I know it's not a maple, it's not an ash, and it's not a dogwood. And I just eliminated a whole bunch of species from the equation that I don't even have to bother looking at now, because I know the simple rule of mad dog. Only maple, ash, and dogwood have opposite branching. There's one exception to that rule, and that is the alternate leafed dogwood. But that's pretty simple because the name tells you it's alternate leaved. That simple thing will make identifying plants and trees so much easier for you if you can just, you know, wrap your head around these terms and start using them. If your intention is to really learn and identify and use the plants and trees around you, that's what you have to do. You need to learn those terms, and you need to learn how to apply them in the field. You don't need to know how to spell them or write them, but you do need to know what they mean and how to apply them. And, you know, just so you can see that applied, here's a little shrub. Well, let's say I don't know what it is. I come up here and I look. First thing I want to look at is it opposite or alternate leaved? Very first thing. Wow, it looks like it's alternate because there's a branch and there's not one on the other side. Come down a little further. Well, there's a branch, and now this isn't perfectly straight, so this might be a little misconceiving. Let's take a closer look. Okay, now here's a branch on the same plant, and it does have opposite branching. Opposite right there. Sometimes with opposite branched or opposite leaved trees and plants, one side will fall off, and it will trick you into thinking it's alternate, but it's not. You gotta look closer, you know. Don't just look at one branch and think you figured it out. Check a few and make sure it's actually opposite. Now I know this is opposite, so I know this is either a maple or an ash or a dogwood. Now, I know what a maple leaf looks like. That most definitely is not a maple leaf. That kind of looks like a cherry leaf or something. So I know it's not a maple. Now let's see, ash. Ash has a compound leaf, which means that the leaf is actually made up of a whole bunch of little leaves. Well, this looks like it's just one single leaf. So I know it's not ash because it doesn't have compound leaves. And since it can only be maple, ash, or dogwood, the only option left is dogwood. Now, without knowing a whole lot about plants, I've just identified this plant to species, or genera, I'm sorry, based on just those two simple things, knowing that maple, ash, and dogwood have opposite branching, and also, you know, knowing that a maple doesn't have a leaf like that, and neither does an ash. And if I wanted to go further, I could take this leaf, since I know that dogwood leaves have little veins in them that will cling to each other when I tear it apart. And that allows the leaf to dangle by that little vein. So now I know for sure this is definitely a dogwood. Now the only thing left for me to do is go into my field guide and look up dogwood and all the species of dogwood and determine which dogwood I have. And that's going to be pretty easy because there's probably only, you know, there may be 5, there may be 20 different species of dogwood, I'm not sure, but it sure beats looking through an identification book at thousands of different trees and bushes and wondering what the hell do I have. Because, you know, 2 minutes time and a simple rule of thumb, which there aren't many rules of thumb in the plant world, and I've just saved myself a whole lot of work. Now I can go online to my favorite forum and post a picture of it and say, hey, what kind of dogwood do I have here? You know, instead of just saying, does anybody know what this is? And, you know, snapping a picture like that, and it's not very descriptive. The picture wouldn't tell me if it had opposite branching. The picture wouldn't tell me if the leaves separated like that. So there's a lot of things you can do to speed up your identification of plants and such. Here's another good example of the opposite branching. Now I look at this tree and I'm like, okay, I don't know what this is, but I do know right off the bat that it has opposite leaves. And of course, if it has opposite leaves, it has opposite branching. And if it has opposite branching, it doesn't matter if I'm in Timbuktu, I know that this is either a maple, an ash, or a dogwood. So I look at the leaf and I say, oh man, these leaves are all ate up by bugs. I can't determine what this is. And so I look around and I try to find one that isn't eaten up by bugs. Here's one. Wow, so let's see, that is a compound leaflet. And you know what? I would almost say that might be an ash, but it doesn't appear to have enough compound leaflets. And it sure doesn't look like a maple. because it doesn't have that typical maple leaf, you know, like that. So I don't know, I don't think it's a maple, and dogwoods have simple leaves as far as I know, and so it's definitely not a dogwood. And I'm pretty sure, even though it has compound leaves, that it's not an ash, because if I look online at ash leaf pictures, I see they have, you know, quite a few little leaflets on there, and this doesn't have enough. I know this is maple ash or dogwood because of the opposite branching. I know it's not dogwood. I know it's probably not ash, so that only leaves maple, but that leaf is just not a maple leaf, is it? Actually, it is a maple leaf, because this plant is a little tricky, because this is box elder, and it doesn't have your typical maple leaf, but it is a maple. And if I went home and I did some Google searches for opposite leaved trees, or maple, or ash, or dogwood, and I started looking at pictures, I'd pretty quickly run into a picture of the box elder. And I'd be like, aha, now I know what it is. It is a maple ash or dogwood, because it has opposite branching. And it just took me a little extra research online to realize that, you know, it's box elder, and it just happens to have a leaf that is not typical of a maple. The same way that the alternate leafed dogwood doesn't quite fit into the scenario. There's always exceptions to the rule. And you know, that's kind of, really, that's why there are no rules of thumb in the plant world, because there are differences. But Mad Dog is a good rule of thumb, and I think if you're a person that likes nature and likes learning about nature, maybe you're a person that likes eating wild food, maybe you're a survivalist, or maybe you're just a camper or a hiker, you know, and you're just curious. Now you got something when you go out in the woods, you can keep that Mad Dog rule in mind, and as you see trees and plants, you know, just apply it and see if it works for you. See if it makes identifying trees much, much easier. So here's another example. Now here's an interesting little shrub. It has catkins on it, and I don't know, that just kind of throws it out, makes it stand out to me. It's like, oh, this has got catkins. I wonder if that's somehow useful. I don't know. I don't know what a catkin would make me think that, but it just made it stand out to me. And there's these little catkins, and I look, you know, like I said, the first thing I really do is I look at the branching, and I can clearly see that that's alternate branching, because I have one on the left and then it comes up, and I have one on the right and there's not one across from it. One on the left, come up a few, one on the right, come up a few, one on the right, come up a few, one on the left. There could be 3 on the right, 2 on the left, it doesn't matter. They're not across from each other. That means it's alternate. So I know it's not maple ash or dogwood. And that leaves me a whole bunch of other trees or shrubs that it could be. So what I would do in this situation is, you know, I can't narrow it down anymore in the field. Actually I could, but I'm not going to go into that. But I'm just going to take me a real close-up picture of the leaf on the top and on the bottom, and I'll take a picture of the catkins, and I'll take a picture of the bark, a close-up of the bark, in case there's any markings or something that will help identify it later. And if it has any flowers or fruit, I will take a picture of that. And another thing I like to do is stand back and take a picture of the whole plant in situ or whatever, you know, as it grows, and add that to my little library. And then when I go home, I'll just start researching, you know, alternate leaved trees or shrubs that have catkins. Alternate leaved trees, shrubs, catkins. That would be, probably that would make up what my search would be, my initial search. And it would bring back some stuff. And on the internet, I can just look at Google Images, you know, and I can look through a whole bunch of images, and probably right away I'm going to see a plant that looks similar to this, with this type of leaf, and the alternate branching, and this height, with catkins. And eventually what I'm going to realize is that there is hazelnut. But it's going to take me some research to figure that one out. But even though I still have to research it, at least now I know that it's not maple ash or dogwood. So any pictures or any links I see or any books or entries I see refer to maple ash or dogwood, I can just pass right on by those because I know it's not one of those. And it will speed up the process. Even though it didn't lead me directly to identification to genus, maple ash or dogwood, it lets me know that it's not any of those three, so I can eliminate those from the equation, and I can only look at stuff that doesn't relate to maple ash or dogwood. And it will end up saving me a whole lot of time in identifying that shrub. Alright, here's a good example of the mad dog theory, and I'm going to put it to the test because I don't know what this tree is, and I might be eating my own words here. But this tree has opposite branching. It has simple toothed leaves. It has a little dark purple to black berry that's on a red stem, and it has a little new leaf bud here that may be a determining factor in its identification. So I'm going to take detailed pictures of all that, and I'm going to go home and try to identify it. But based on Mad Dog, this should either be a maple ash or a dogwood because it does have opposite branching, and that's it. You know, it has opposite branching, so it should be either a maple ash or a dogwood. We'll go and put this to the test and see if it tests out. I'm betting that it's a dogwood because it's not a maple or an ash. I already know that. So we'll see if I can find any types of dogwood online that have a little black berry like that. Or maybe I'll find some other plant and prove that whole mad dog theory wrong. We'll see. Okay, so like I said, I looked into this tree, and it appears to be nannyberry, a viburnum species of shrub, which is not mad dog. The viburnum is not maple ash or dogwood, but it does have opposite branching, so that kind of proves that the mad dog rule is not 100%. There are other trees and shrubs that have opposite branching, but the mad dog rule is still a pretty good rule because it will help you to identify maple ash and dogwood. Well, I just want to round out the whole mad dog thing and show you ash. I showed you maple and dogwood, now I'll show you ash. This isn't the best example. This is actually just a small sapling, but all of our ash trees, all of our mature trees are dead, And all of the larger ones have already dropped their leaves because ash is one of the first trees to drop its leaves in the fall. But as you can see, opposite branching. So right away, I know it's maple ash or dogwood. It's not a maple because it don't have a maple leaf. It's not a dogwood because it has a compound leaf, and that only leaves ash. And that looks like an ash leaf to me. I could go online and Google ash leaf images, and I would be able to determine right away that that is most likely an ash. Now it's only a matter of determining which ash.